This is Dan Proft coming to you from the Skyline Club atop the Old Republic building for another edition of Against the Current. Pleased to have as my guests on this installment both Niall Fagan, the headmaster at Northridge Prep, which is an independent Catholic school on the north side, and the athletic director for Northridge Prep, which is a name you Chicagoans are probably familiar with. He is Will Ray, the former basketball coach, head basketball coach at Loyola University, which has produced such great basketball players as Alfrederick Hughes. And I could spend the entire time we have just talking about college basketball with you, as I did when I happened to visit Northridge Prep a couple weeks ago, which was great fun. But let's talk more globally about Northridge Prep, an independent Catholic school, as a model that should be scaled. Not just what you guys are doing, but maybe some of the lessons learned that other educators would be interested in at least exploring, if not adopting, in addition to the new reality in Illinois, which is tax credit scholarships, which provide for low to middle income families to have the same choices in K through 12 education that the rich and the politically connected have always had in Chicago and the state of Illinois. So Neil, why don't we start with you as the headmaster of the school. Just kind of give us the backstory of Northridge Prep, which has been around for a long time, your approach to educating young men, because it's boys only,
right,
and the success that Northridge Prep has had doing just that.
Yeah, no, thanks. Well, first, and also thanks for having us. We're really honored to be here. Yeah, Northridge, as you said, is an independent school for boys. We start in 6th grade and we go through 12th grade. And what's special or unique about Northridge? Well, we do believe that every boy has a great mission in their life, and education should help them prepare for it and discover it. And we do that in a number of ways. One that's, I think, unique is we actively partner with parents. And we see parents as the primary educators of their child, and we recognize that, we respect it, and we see ourselves as partnering with them to help them raise their boys. So practically what that means is there's a lot of communication. When we see something that's good, we'll let them know. When we see something that's troublesome, like, hey, he gets upset when he doesn't get 100, that's something that we can work with them and we let them know. So partnering with parents. Another one, very special in Northridge, is this unique environment that's all boys. Boys learn better and on their own. As boys, we can teach to them, and we can talk about that a lot more if you want. But this environment helps them do well academically, socially, allows them to participate in a number of things that might not want to participate if it's a co-ed environment. So the all-boy thing is a great thing. And then the third one is a demanding curriculum, where we push the boys, especially in high school. We really challenge them. They're exposed to primary sources. They have to write a lot. They read a lot of great works of the Western tradition. And so the focus is on becoming men who can analyze, who can understand bias, recognize nonsense when they see it, and articulate their point of view. And then the last one would be character formation. So character formation is something that we do throughout. On the sports field, and Will can talk a lot about that, in the classroom, in our clubs, our coaches are always told, and they challenge the boys, and they talk to the boys about, hey, that was a lack of generosity, or that was a lack of fortitude, and we help them.
Cardinal virtues.
Cardinal virtues, right. Cardinal virtues, that's right. And help them practice that through these activities. So I'd say that's what's kind of maybe unique to Northridge, these things of working with parents, this unique environment, the demanding liberal arts, and then character formation and everything.
Just got to take this the part about being all boys, because once upon a time this wouldn't be something that's necessarily revelatory or even interesting or remarkable.
I know.
But I mean, so the high school I went to, Bennett Academy, was St. Procopius. When it was St. Procopius, it was all boys. Fenwick, of course, was all boys. A lot of Catholic schools were all boys at one point in time.
You went. It was co-ed when you went.
It was co-ed when I went. Yeah, of course. Not that I could really tell the difference, because no girls were interested in me, so it might as well have been all boys. But to talk about the all boys thing, because I think in some respects, like kind of like homeschooling, you hear parents hear that, I should say. They say, oh gosh, well now I'm worried about socialization.
Right. That's right.
They won't 6 through 12. I mean, all boys through high school. They won't learn how to interact with women and so forth, young women. And so speak to that in terms of why that's an approach that actually enhances, if not at minimum, still prepares them to be socialized gentlemen as they enter their formative years.
Yeah, and so first, that concern is valid if they lived in a vacuum. If you don't interact with girls, you don't know how to, right? And so that concern is valid. We do have a sister school. There's a lot of socialization that occurs.
Willows.
The Willows, that's right, the Willows. And so at sports games, there's a lot of girls at our school. They interact all the time there. There's a lot of tradition of going out after that. There's a lot of parties, dances. So it's not like they're in a bubble. But to your question is, well, like, how does it help them? And the big one is actually confidence. When you see parents, and moms especially, worried about their sons socializing with girls, often is boys don't have confidence. And actually in an all-boys school, you see boys developing confidence, I think, much better than in a co-ed environment. Why is that? It's a lot of things, but the friendships they build tend to be deeper. And the reason for that is because without girls being there, they're just much more natural than themselves. And friendship is really knowing somebody for who he really is and liking that person for who he really is, right? That's the foundation of friendship. And so you see the friendships in all-boys school. And it's not just at Northridge. Any all-boys school, you'll see them always talk about friendships. Camaraderie is great. Something that is unique to Northridge is that we have an all-male faculty. And that's hard to do, right? But we work hard at finding great men who are good teachers, but also role models. And the friendships that you see between the students and the faculty, especially in high school, is really something that's remarkable. And it's been there throughout the 40-year history of Northridge. And what you see is you have these men, the teachers, developing good relationships with these students, and seeing the men from outside the family validating who they are actually helps build their confidence. It's something that's really special at Northridge, and it works really well. There's a whole bunch of other areas too, like education. Boys do learn better in an all-male environment. There's actually a lot of studies that show that. Girls do too. So girls do a bit better in a single gender, just all-girl school. Boys do significantly better. And I think the reason is that education tends to be skewed towards the way girls learn. Most education is co-ed, and so girls tend to do better, on average than boys in a co-ed environment, and they do a bit better on their own. But boys do significantly.
And it's interesting too, because at the collegiate level, you still have the seven sisters, right? Those kind of revered, small liberal arts schools on in the Northeast that are girls' schools, basically. I mean, Vassar lets Rahm Emanuel attend, but generally speaking, they're girls' schools.
Yeah, you do, and you don't really have any.
Sarah Lawrence. I'm sorry, Sarah Lawrence.
You don't have really too many all guys colleges, and I'm not sure that. I don't know, some of them, but once you're in college, I think the need goes away. I think boys have become men.
Well, I talk about your faculty too. I had the opportunity to meet several of them when I visited the school too. And I mean, you're talking about male mentors in addition to, and this is important, and you make this point all the time, about reinforcing the values that they're being taught at home from their male mentor at home, their father. But male mentors at school that are deep intellects, high academic credentials, but also kind of character formation mentors too.
That's right. We yes, you'll see that. So one, I was talking about just the relationship, and that goes a long way. So just today, I was talking to one of our teachers, and he had been noticing a student was kind of slacking off, as guys will do. And this is a guy that he's known now for 3 years. And he took him aside and just read him the riot act. He says, "What are you doing? You're wasting your time. You're wasting your career here. You got to kick it into gear." And I was talking to him this week, just today, and he says the guy's totally turned around. And that's a primary way we help our boys. Is just day in, day out, helping them stay organized, stay working things. And Will can talk a lot about what we do in the sports program on this.
Well, that's the other thing that's fun about this, Will, too. And I mean, again, you're a Division I basketball coach, follow Gene Sullivan, legend at Loyola as well. And so this seems to me that something's a little bit different in Northridge, even than Bennett when I was there at least. I mean, there's a sort of seamlessness between the academic piece of this and then the athletics piece of it, where the athletics piece of it is reinforcing the academics piece of it with respect to character formation and teamwork
Absolutely.
in your sports programs.
Yeah, and I think the reason sports works well at Northridge is because we're the same. We share the same mission. In my experience in coaching over the years, both at the college and high school level before Northridge, I noticed situations where perhaps the athletic department had a different mission than, say, the school, right? And so you have coaches who are at odds with the administration, and there seems to be a disconnect between the two. And that's not the case at Northridge. At Northridge, our athletic department reflects the mission and promotes the mission of the school, which is to build men of character, right? And we want to be successful. We want to teach them how to compete and compete hard and play fair and play to win. All important lessons that sports teach, but never always at the service of character formation.
Well, a coach is a teacher.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
it's an educator.
This is what I was taught. I mean, the greatest coach in the history of organized sports, as far as I'm concerned, present company excluded, of course, John Wooden.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if you write poetry like John Wooden
I
did,
don't.
But that everyone reveres John Wooden because he was somebody at the collegiate level, even with, free spirits like Bill Walton,
Right.
who was always the consummate educator, and everybody understood teacher, student on those great UCLA teams.
Absolutely. And the greatest testimonial to Wooden's greatness as an educator are his former players.
Yeah.
And they come back as adult men who are now successful businessmen, fathers, husbands, and great citizens in many cases. And they're coming back and crediting Wooden as having been the most important and influential professor they ever had at UCLA.
Well, so talk about this, because part of the thing, and I want to get back to you, Neil, as well, because part of this story of Northridge Prep, not dissimilar to some other schools, but frankly a few schools, is people who've foregone making more money, being in careers where they could have gained more adulation, like Division I men's basketball, which is a billion-dollar industry, to do something like this. And so, you could have continued coaching at the D1 level and made a lot more money and had a lot more fanfare, but you decided to do this. Why?
Largely because I got to a point in my professional career where I realized that, sometimes you're climbing a ladder, so to speak, professionally, and you get close to the top rung and you figure out that the ladder's up against the wrong building. And that's what happened to me. I realized several years before I left Division I is that the reason I got into education in the first place is I wanted to help impact young men. And not to say that that's not being done at the college level. There are some outstanding coaches, as Wooden, we've mentioned,
Right.
did himself. But there are other challenges. And as I like to tell my friends, college basketball is a great game, but it's a bad business. And there's a business element to it that sometimes, it just draws away from the impact that a coach can have on a guy growing up.
Well,
right?
we've seen
We've
that.
just seen it
We've seen
recently,
that
right?
recently with the
Right,
scandal. Right?
exactly. And that comes as no surprise to anyone who's been in the business, Dan. It's just the only surprise was that the level of the problems are so deep that you needed the federal government to come in and actually uncover them, right? So for me personally, it was just a decision that after speaking with my wife that I wanted to get back to really influencing and impacting and doing what I originally set out to do when I left college or got into education. And I see sports as a great vehicle, largely because you have a captive audience that wants to be there, right? Like I like to say is, we use what they want, which is to be a part of a sport, to give them what they really need at the end of the day, right? Which is, mentorship and leadership and what it means to become an authentic man of integrity. So, to me, sports are a great teacher, especially in these adolescent years. And so I wanted to get back to a level where that was going to be the case. And then especially at a place like Northridge, the school's the institutional mission is built on that premise. So for me, this was hand in glove. I've been now entering my 14th year and not one moment of regret. And what I like to tell my college coaching buddies when they ask, why did you make this decision? I said, well, what I've learned is that sometimes in life you find the greatest fulfillment in the least likely of places. Yeah. And that's what's happened for me. So I can't imagine being anywhere else right now, coaching-wise. It's a great opportunity, and just to have the chance to use what I love about coaching to hopefully influence young men.
Yeah, you got a little bit of a Norman Dale thing going on there at Northridge. You're not necessarily a feeder school.
Not quite as dramatic as Hoosiers, but
my team's on the floor. I know there's not those moments necessarily, but you're not necessarily a feeder school to Kentucky. Not that you're averse to one of your kids going on to play the premier D1 program, but But give us a sense of the breadth and depth of the sports programs at Northridge Prep, because that's important to families too.
Sure.
Make sure their kids are in these extracurriculars that they like to do. I mean, every boy grows up loving to play, not every boy, but loving sports, and we'll get to the academics and the other cultural and arts programs as well. But the sports offerings at Northridge Prep.
Well, we're members of the IHSA, Illinois High School Association, so we compete at the state level in all of our sports. We're also members of the Independent School League, which are schools that are like-minded. There are schools like ours, about the same size, maybe a little bit bigger in some cases.
And we're talking about
Latin, Parker, University of Chicago Lab School, Morgan Park Academy, North Shore Country Day. Those are schools in our conference. But outside of the conference, we compete against many of the local Chicago area high school, public high schools and Catholic schools. So we always play up in size in our non-conference schedule, which is part of the learning process, right? That you're not always going to have the best resources necessarily or the same resources that someone else has, but you still have to figure out a way to make it work. And I like to use the example with our basketball players, which is the team I coach, that sometimes you're going to be a lawyer in a small firm and you have to fight and win that case against the biggest law firm in the world, right? They might have greater resources and more at their disposal than you have, but you still have to figure out a way. So to me, this is part of the learning process. But we offer in the fall cross country, soccer, and golf. In the winter, basketball. We're getting ready to. We also sponsor some individual swimmers in the winter. We're also looking at some other program offerings for the winter going forward. In the spring, baseball and a track and field program, and then also individual competitors in tennis. So we have a pretty robust program for a school our size, and we compete at a very high level. It's amazing what our guys accomplish, Dan. I tell you, it's incredible.
So I mean, so for like, I'm just envisioning Northridge Prep versus like North Shore Country Day or Francis Parker. Is there like a book exchange at center court where like you give them C.S. Lewis and they give you Thomas Frank or something like that, and then you kind of convene after the game? Or
there's a few elbows exchanged, that's
Right,
for sure, during
sure.
the course of the
kind of the philosophical differences
Right.
are adjudicated on the court.
And that was one of the aspects of this that I didn't anticipate, that I realized as soon as I got to Northridge, is that for the competitors, for the athletes, it's just as important to compete hard and compete well as it was at the Division I level. Obviously there's a difference in the athletic ability, to be sure. But in terms of the competitiveness and the teamwork and all the things that you look to bring out in young guys, it's no different at Northridge than it would be, say, when we played Purdue or played Kentucky or played one of these universities that everybody recognizes as schools.
Well, and it's got to be, I mean, to some extent, I wonder if it's more fun even to coach at this level because you see so much growth over the course of the season, where at Loyola, I mean, not that you coached Alfred Hughes, but you just kind of roll out the ball and say, shoot 40 times and let's see what happens.
Well, I found that in coaching, rolling out the ball doesn't lend to successful seasons.
Right.
So but you're right. I mean, there's a certain element that a talented and gifted athlete brings to the table, right? And so the coaching at the Division I level takes a different turn than it does, say, for example, at a level where you're teaching the basic skills and fundamentals. There's certain things you can assume at the Division I level after you've recruited a young man to your program, that he's able to do certain things, right? So the coaching is more directed towards teaching guys to play well together and how to defer to each other, how to be unselfish. I mean, the intangible qualities are ultimately what's going to lead to success at any level, but especially so when you have gifted athletes.
And it is true. You see these guys go from nothing to.
Oh, it's amazing the improvements they make.
To your point, Dan.
And to me,
well, I mean, it's great. I mean, look, there's not a lot of high school programs that have a successful D1 coach as their basketball coach. I mean, so that's a great value add for Northridge.
Well, I always said when I was in college coaching that I was really a high school coach at heart, and I always tried to keep that in mind. That was always, I felt my identity was that I'm a high school coach that happens to be coaching at the Division I level. But some people talk about the salary differences, right? I mean, guys are making $2 and $3 million a year coaching college basketball today, and for me, the paychecks are the emails or the text messages you get from former players who look back on their experience and say, this is one of the most significant and profound experiences that I had in high school, was my athletic experience. So, those are the paychecks that
And there's a lot of guys. The guys coming back to his office. I mean, it's like a stream,
right?
A steady stream.
And I like to say it's not because of me. It's because of the entire environment at Northridge. I think when people see how coherent our place is and how the academic and the extracurriculars, it all fits together. I think that type of environment is attractive for young guys when they see that consistency. And part of the reason why they come back, I believe, is because of the affinity that they have for their alma mater.
But if Neil and the parents wanted to pay you $2 or $3 million a year, you wouldn't oppose.
I would not oppose it.
All right, so that's
Except he'd probably ask me to give half of that back.
right,
you know,
exactly. So Neil, tell the story about how you came to Northridge Prep, because you weren't necessarily on a track to be a professional educator.
No, it is. Yeah, it wasn't. Right out of college, I taught for 2 years, yeah, I actually always thought I'd do business, but then in college I did some seminars with high school kids in the summer, and I said, actually, I really enjoyed that. So I went and taught 2 years in New York City, in the Bronx, actually Cardinal Hayes High School. It's a big all boys diocesan school right near Yankee Stadium. Really liked working with the students, standing up teaching all day long, just whatever. It didn't engage me the way I wanted. I was really excited about business, and I said, I'm just going to do that. So actually I moved out to Chicago and started working with 2 guys who left consulting. We're starting a little PE shop, and so I worked with them for a few years. Loved that. Went to business school, discovered marketing, and wanted to work in a great marketing firm, and actually ended up at Harley-Davidson in Milwaukee because they have a great marketing program. They actually had a really cool management development program, and so I did that for a few years and did marketing stint and did a stint in retail, and I was having a blast. And then out of the blue, I got a call from a board member at Northridge, and I had met him during my time here in Chicago. And he said, "Hey, Neil, I know you're not thinking about this, but what would you think about being headmaster at Northridge?" And he was right. I was not thinking about it. I mean, it was out of the blue. Harley's a great place. Their sales are down a bit, but the culture's great. I was having a blast. I was really fortunate in the work I was doing. I'd been given some really great assignments, and so that took.
You don't necessarily cut the swath of a guy riding a hog on the.
No,
weekend.
I know.
Yeah.
It's funny when I applied, I had one pair of jeans.
Sure.
Which were for working in the yard. I did, I was a khaki.
You would roll up your Oxford when you worked in the yard.
Yeah. No, it's fair. But I mean, Harley's a great company. The culture's great. What they do, I mean, is awesome.
Yeah.
And I definitely identified with even with the vibe of it, and what the customers ride and why they ride. It's great. And riding, I don't know if you've ever ridden a motorcycle, but
I have.
Some of the crew have. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, it's it's freedom, it's America.
It is.
I mean, it's all of
and these
things.
machines are amazing.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I prayed about it and just said, you know what, this society right now, it needs great young men, and I really can't think of many more things that are honestly more important for society than building young men. And a chance to do that at a place like Northridge is just a great opportunity. To be a headmaster also, I mean, it's a great job. I mean, you have a great job. I definitely have a great job. I mean, you work with kids, you work with the parents, you work with the teachers, you're building a community, you have to think strategically, all of these things. It's a blast,
And so are you in Will's camp at 14 years, never a day of regret? Same thing for you?
Yeah, it's been 3, but
Right.
Oh no, not a single regret. Do I miss some people at Harley? Yeah, but
Sure.
I don't regret it one bit. It's a wonderful job. I mean, you see these. I mean, these kids come in, you shake their hand, and then later in the halls they come up, they're talking to you, you're advising them, you're helping them grow. I mean, it's pretty impactful.
No, I mean, look, when I was there, I was talking to a kid who was not feeling well that day, was outside.
right,
yeah,
Pete.
and he was a 7th grader or something?
7th grader. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like more articulate than 95% of the Illinois General Assembly, the Illinois congressional delegation for that matter too. Is like, hey, Pete, what's going on? And he, held forth with everything that was going on.
Right.
Incomplete
That's right.
sentences
I know,
with cogent thinking.
I know.
So I mean, it is a testament. So I wonder though, with respect to what you said, you prayed about it. You prayed about it. That's sort of kind of a phrase in today's culture where I think a lot of people roll their eyes. Mm-hmm. Oh, you prayed about it. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're one of those, right? Yeah. And so what about the piece of it, independent Catholic school? What about the religion piece of it? And the idea of being a servant leader, as Catholicism teaches us to be, and being somebody who lives the cardinal virtues, as we talked about earlier, proudly but humbly.
Yeah.
What about that, and kind of getting people comfortable with people that might not understand someone who genuinely prays about it before they make a big life decision?
Yeah. That's obviously a really big topic. I think one thing is very important that we stress a lot is freedom. We do want the boys to understand the faith and embrace it, but we really believe that that's if you try to force that in any way, it's not healthy. Obviously, it backfires. Obviously,
Right.
It's counterproductive. So it is interesting. It's something that we stress a lot is freedom. So we try to make it very attractive because we think it is really attractive. We just try to explain it for what it is, try to help them understand why we believe these things, but not force it. Religion class is not mandatory. Especially if you're non-Catholic, it's up to the parents. In all cases, it's up to the parents. So if a parent says, hey, I don't want my son in religion class, no problem. We offer Mass every day in the middle of the day. We make it available. There's a study hall as an alternative, and kids choose to go, whether or not to go.
So they get to choose Mass or study.
Or study hall, yeah.
And so and each day, so they can do Mass one day and study hall the next, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So how does that work itself out? How do the kids react to that?
It's very natural. It's very natural. Yeah, it's not an issue. They get it. That hey, you're free to go, or you're free to go to study hall. There's never any pressure implied or otherwise to go to Mass. And what's also cool is we do a time right after Mass at Thanksgiving when we believe our Lord's in us and we can talk to Him. It's very intimate. But if the kids want to get up and leave right away, that's fine. They're unproctored in the hallways. They can just get up in the hallways and they're unproctored, and we give them that freedom. And there's real trust that goes along with that. In most schools, if you're in the hallway and it's in the middle of class, you shouldn't be there, right? We just let them. So there is this, and they feel it. There's a real sense of freedom, and that's actually something throughout the school. We don't have rules. There's no rule book. I mean, we have a parent-student handbook, of course, but example of that is, and then I'll get back to religion. Is we're going through some renovations, some construction. The ceilings are open in parts of the hallways. There's construction guys around, and we thought about actually having an all-school assembly at the start of the school, saying, "Okay, guys, there's construction. Avoid this. Do that." And we said, you know what? That kind of implies that we don't trust them. We're not going to say a thing. And then obviously, if they misbehave, we'll get on them, and they know that we will. We haven't had a single problem. And I think, again, they appreciate the fact that we trust them, and they respond to that.
So there's this kind of standard setting, and you know what the standards are,
Yeah.
and you know what happens if you don't abide the standards.
That's right.
That's it.
And so we don't have rules. Like running the hallways, there's just no rules. We never talk to them about rules. And you're expected to act like a man. We're not going to tell you to do that. And then if they don't, they'll get detention or whatever the appropriate punishment is. But it's a much more sense of freedom and respect, and they rise to that, and the culture builds around that, which is cool to see.
So for both of you gentlemen, on the issue of parents, one of the things that was interesting to me when we talked with your director of admissions was kind of the conversation you have with the family prior to admission, and the idea that, look, we're essentially, we're not begging people to come to Northridge. This is like we're trying to say, is your young man and kind of your disposition towards your young man, is this a good fit for Northridge? Because if it's not a good fit for Northridge, we'll tell you it's just not a good fit, and it'll be a better fit for your family and your boy going somewhere else, and that's fine.
That's right.
And so just to develop that a little bit, especially as an independent Catholic school that relies on admissions and tuition, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, it's we're looking for families who share the same values, and that doesn't mean necessarily the same faith.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of but the philosophy is a little bit like Monsignor Michael Boland at Catholic Charity says. We do what we do not because our beneficiaries are Catholic, but because we're Catholic.
Right. That's very well put.
Well said.
Well said. Yeah. That's right. No, that's right. We're doing this because we really believe this is a great way to educate young men, to help men become really good, strong men of virtue and character. And we're looking for parents who want that for their son. I mean, honestly, I think it's a very compelling thing that we offer. You've seen it. It's a special place. The boys love being there. They really do. We give them all kinds of opportunities. We can talk more about the activities and stuff that we do. So it's a great education. The boys love it. But it's very important that you understand our values, which are traditional, and we expect boys to rise to that. We're going to talk about these values. We will talk about the faith in all school announcements, but we're not going to force it on them. If they're not Catholic, they don't have to receive that. but the values are what's important. And so when we meet with parents, we talk about it. We look to see, we interview the parents. That's an important part of the admissions process. We ask both parents to come. We interview them. We interview the child, and that's probably the most important part of it, because we're looking to see, is this a good fit.
And Will, what about for you when parents say, you know what you're doing, I don't care if you coach at Loyola, my kid deserves more playing time. Does that happen? Like it happens for every coach?
I have to confess that we haven't had too many of those situations in 14 years, and I should knock on wood and make sure.
Yeah,
that,
right.
And I think the parents really see the overriding purpose of our program.
Yeah.
In athletics as well.
So
as
there's buying up front.
Yeah, there's buying up front, so that they realize that our coaches aren't there to build resumes. They're not there because they're trying just to win championships. That's not our overriding purpose. Those are byproducts of our purpose. Our purpose is to help your young son here grow up to be a man, and we're going to use what he loves to get that accomplished. And now in the process, if we win, and what if you don't play? I mean, my response to a parent would be, well, if your son's not playing, what if he doesn't get into the school that he wants to, attend in college? Or what about when he doesn't get the job that he applies for? This is all part of growing up, right? Learning our limitations, our strengths, weaknesses, what things we have to do to get better, realizing that everything in life doesn't go the way we want it to. So how do we respond to that? Well, this is in athletics, we have that opportunity to teach that. And so I think our parents understand that up front. And we've had very few, I can almost count them on one hand, and I'm talking about across the board in all of our sports, because as athletic director, people would come to me if they had concern about another coach in another sport. And I can honestly tell you that I've had about maybe 5 or 6 people over the course of 14 years that have raised a concern about playing time. So it's really a healthy environment in that respect.
And a testament to the coaches.
A testament to the coaches.
They're great guys.
Very
great
yeah,
guys.
it's a
They
testament
care
to
about the kids. And
to the relationship between the coach. Again, we're the secondary educators. We recognize the parents are the primary educators, and we work together. Work in concert with one another.
And Neil, what about the other offerings too? You're talking about building well-rounded men, so exposure to a rigorous academic curriculum, opportunities for athletics, but then arts and
clubs and so forth. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So actually, arts is important. We have a really good band director. This guy's, he's a musician almost. When as an educator, he's worked with actually boys in a variety of fashions since, I don't know, for 20 years. He's got this insight into every single boy. You can talk to him about any boy he's taught, and he says, well, he's phlegmatic, and this is what motivates him. He's choleric, and this is what motivates him. He's got this read on every kid. And he's also an incredible musician. He can play any instrument, like literally. You give him an instrument, doesn't matter which one it is, percussion, wind. So he's always building the band. And in 6th grade, every boy has to play a musical instrument. After that, they're free to choose whether or not to continue. In 6th grade, it's part of the class. And so
you have to pick it in.
You do have to.
It's interesting. Honestly, one of the regrets I have, and I went to Catholic school for my first, grade school and high school, and one of my regrets is I took music class, but never was kind of forced to play an instrument. Would have loved to learn to play the xylophone.
Yeah, and it's something.
I'm a little,
right.
I thought maybe the saxophone.
A little bit of an outlier, a little bit unique. Yeah, I'm on the spectrum somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Boys learn experientially, right? Girls do too. Boys especially. So you have to sometimes force them to do something. Not really force them, but a little bit, right?
Yeah,
so I know you're going to play an instrument. So every kid's required to play, and that's just what the curriculum is. So they just do it. And a lot of them realize, hey, this is kind of cool. And then some will say, no, it's not for me, no problem. So in 6th grade, it's a class. After that, it's part of an activity period that we run in day. It's like an elective period, and we can talk a bit about that. And so he's building the band from that point on. And in high school, it turned out to be a really good jazz band. They play at our social, our big gala dinner every year. People think that they're hired. I always get people saying, where'd you get that band? It's our students. So he does a phenomenal job. And the boys really enjoy it. Part of the reason it works is because we can do it in the middle of the day. So we've structured it so that they can practice in the middle of the day and still be on the sports team and still do other things. We also do two theatrical productions a year, a play and then a musical. And what's nice is we have middle and high school both do it, and it's a good time. We tend to keep the middle and high school separate. That's good, right? Different types of education, but in the drama, they're mixed. And so boys are learning, they're being mentored and acting by the high schoolers. It's kind of a cool experience. And we tend to have multiple casts because you have more guys coming out than fill one cast. So
Please tell me you're not doing like Andrew Lloyd Webber. You're doing like,
no,
yeah.
no. We did actually one of those fun 10 Little Indians. We did that.
Arsenic and Old Lace.
Yeah,
Arsenic and Old Lace.
Standard.
Standard stuff. Yeah. 1776. That was a hoot. Yeah, our guy who played Ben Franklin was just hilarious.
Well, and by the way, this is a lot of activity. What the total student body?
It's 265 middle and high
So
school.
this is everybody's got a lot of stuff going on.
No, it's impressive. The average student, I think, is in 2 clubs and a sport. 60% of our students play a sport, and then the average student, in addition, is in 2 different clubs. They average, right? So some are more. Which is really good for the guys, right? I mean, you can't just learn in a classroom. Obviously, that's crucial, right? It's crucial. But you also have to do stuff outside, and it gets you engaged. And I think it's one of the reasons they enjoy being there. So we have this period called activity period. It's in the middle of the day, and they can choose one of 2. They can choose 2 clubs. So robotics, photography, film, investments. I run a club, entrepreneurship club, which I'm always pushing newspaper, and we have about 20 clubs.
How is the investment club doing against the S&P?
They're about the same. They're about the same.
I just want to know,
Yeah.
maybe some of the parents should invest their money with the
money.
investment club.
Don't send your money in yet, right?
Yeah.
No, we haven't given them our endowment yet.
Okay, all right, okay, good.
They're working on it.
Well, and so let's talk about outcomes a little bit too, because one of the things that's lost in a lot of the K through 12 discussion is inputs, the money in, the expense per pupil, the spend per pupil, all that sort of thing. The outputs, how do your young men go on from Northridge Prep into college and beyond?
Yeah. And there's 2 ways to look at that. You have to look at it professionally. We do. It's very important. And then also personally. So we send students to top colleges. Harvard, Yale, Stanford. We have students currently all there. Notre Dame. 2 years ago, we sent 4 out of 40 to Notre Dame.
That's still a top college. Hey, you went to Notre Dame, didn't you?
So did my son. They have some of my tuition.
Sure.
So I think
Build those skyboxes at
40
the stadium. Yeah.
40%, 45% go to a top 50 college. Average ACT is good, 27, I think. So they do well, and we want them. It's important to us that they go to top colleges, whatever they can get into. Not every boy should go there, right? Some should go into trades. I think 95% of ours go to college, but we're okay if they're not, right? It's whatever's best for that boy. But in general, we want them to be leaders in society, right? That's definitely one thing we're striving.
And what about, before you continue on the outcomes, what about kind of that mentoring and the counseling to the next level, right? In terms of don't necessarily, because one of the great things about the Catholic school I went to is that mentoring don't necessarily always just go for the marquee name or what's popular, what everybody tells you should do. Make sure that it's the right fit. And so if you've got these options you're applying to these schools, well, let's look at these schools and the offerings and the student body size and all of the other dynamics, the location, the physical location of the campus, and what you want to do with your life, what you're looking for, the kind of environment in which you think you would thrive, which I think you would thrive as an adult, and how that conversation happens.
Yeah, I don't think you didn't meet him, but we have Bob Barter is a college counselor. He's actually a licensed family therapist, so he's true counselor, and he goes very deep with them, trying, okay, what do you really want to do in your career-wise? And they have very deep conversations about.
And he starts that process as freshmen.
Yeah.
He brings freshmen in with the parents to talk about
To
college.
kind of watch them,
Just
develop and change.
What you
as
should be
they-
thinking about as you go through your 4 years. of
Yeah, think
preparation.
about this. This is your professional career now. And we talk to them, right? That you're a young man. This is your profession. You're a student. So you got to think ahead. And he does a wonderful job. He's also a master teacher. He teaches a senior class on Anna Karenina. And it's
Oh my gosh,
it's a wonderful.
that is a senior class.
Yeah.
I mean that's impressive. Anybody who can get through Anna Karenina should be fast tracked to an Ivy League school.
Yeah. No, actually, I want to sit down in that class. He's a great teacher. So he's a great resource, and he guides them appropriate. So.
And then you mentioned it before, but I want to develop it in more detail. Kind of the kids that come back to the school, because one of the things, and it takes some time, because I didn't really appreciate the quality of education I got at the high school level until I had gone to college and then got my law degree and was out in the world for a little while, and then I realized just how strong the high school education was, and even the kind of junior high to high school, which is your universe, how strong it was and how much I appreciated it and how important that education was in those formative years. And then you go back and you say, okay, well, I want to tell other 6th to 12th graders how important this time is, how fortunate they are, how much they should take advantage of it. So I know I'm coming up, I'm speaking to the Bennett Dads Club, Bennett Academy, where I went, and to impart, my experience and looking back on it 25 years later, what that means and how I think some of them will think about it. So the people that come back, I mean, I know people that are contemporaries of ours, not to age you, Will, but contemporaries of ours who went to Northridge Prep, and that's how they feel about Northridge Prep, and they went on to great schools, they went to great careers, and and especially in Chicago, what does everybody say? Well, where are you from? Where'd you go to high school? Right? And then where'd you go to high school is a conversation about kind of values and upbringing and opportunities and kind of your personal story. And so the people that come back to Northridge Prep, the grads, and how that interaction, the alumni interaction is.
Yeah. No, I mean, you see guys back all the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that it's not unusual for us when they go away to school and then come back. We host a Thanksgiving basketball tournament, and it's really well attended by our recent grads. But it's not unusual for them to come back and say, "Geez, how's things going in at your school?" Oh, I can't tell you how much better prepared I am than the guy sitting next to me.
Yeah.
And they see, looking back as they reflect on their high school years, how well prepared they were for college, and our teachers just do a magnificent job. Mentioning someone like Bob Barter, we have a U.S. history teacher by the name of Dr. Kelleher, Tom Kelleher, who just did a phenomenal job preparing young men for the AP tests and so forth. And in fact, my son had 2 great teachers at Northridge, Joe Lechner and Tom Kelleher. When he got to Notre Dame, he decided to major in history, right? And I said to him, what led you in this direction? He said, well, I just had great teachers in high school that really inspired me to develop an interest in history. So, we hear this it's a consistent stream of feedback from our alums.
And actually, there's kind of cool. I mean, I'm only kind of slowly getting to know the alumni, right? Because I'm new to the school. I didn't grow here. I didn't grow up here. But 2 years ago, Dr. Kelleher, actually, who runs a class in junior year, we have a class actually preparing for college. It's about the whole application and also how to use college well. And so he'll bring alumni back all the time for that. And then he brought this guy down and said, "Hey, you got to meet this kid." It was Joe Egan, and he was a freshman at Holy Cross College, and I met him, really liked him. Tom said, "Hey, he could help out," and so we wanted to get a summer camp program going. So I called him up, and I said, "Hey, Joe, you want to own this?" Because we didn't have anybody at the school who had the bandwidth, so Joe was like, "Yeah, sure." So he developed we spent a year putting together a summer camp program, which launched last year. And huge success. We had 300 kids come in across a bunch of different camps. But Joe got a bunch of alumni to run the camps, be counselors, and they all did it just to help the school. I mean, they could have made more money elsewhere. They did this to help the school. We just had a phone-a-thon. A bunch of alumni came just to actually raise money for the school. So you see this, that the appreciation for Northridge is very big.
And so Jordan Peterson, who's this professor of psychology up at the University of Toronto, talks about the purpose of education, and particularly he's talking about higher ed, but it's not limited to higher ed. The ability, it's about teaching young men and women the ability to think, to be able to express themselves cogently, the ability to make arguments. And that's about, it's not necessarily just to track you into being a computer scientist or to being in this profession or that profession. And it seems to me Northridge Prep is an acolyte of that philosophy. Where I went to high school is an acolyte of that philosophy, but a lot of high schools, most high schools I would say are not.
That's right. Our founding headmaster, Jim Stenson, would say, I had the privilege of knowing him actually because he ended up in Washington, D.C. and so forth. Said education is what you know once you've forgotten what you've been taught, And he said it a little more eloquently than that. But that's something that was his approach. He's like, look, we're here to teach you how to think. You're not going to remember the periodic table when it's full, right? You're here to learn how to think, how to work and to think. And that's something that's in the culture from the start, right? So learning how to write, learning how to speak, we have our boys stand up. We have a debating club in middle school. Actually, it's a really popular club in middle school. It's debate. They have 50, 60 kids in there. They're debating, which is better, blue or red, or Pokemon or this. But they're getting up and speaking. And so it's true, because there's so much more to life than knowing the technical skills to have a job. A. B, you actually do much better in your career if you can think, independently for yourself. I mean, I majored in philosophy.
Right.
And I ended up doing business and marketing, and I wouldn't change that track for anything, right? I would not go to business school in college.
Well, and as much, I mean, as much as like the kind of the Marco Rubio line, we need more welders and less philosophers. There's some truth to that.
There's a lot of truth,
but only some truth to it.
Right.
Because the other piece of this is Yates, that education is not the filling of a pail, it's the lighting of a fire.
Right.
The idea is you teach young men, in your context of young men, grade 6 through 12, to be always intellectually curious, to be lifelong learners. And so if you're always intellectually curious, it doesn't matter what profession you're in, because you're always asking the next question, you're always trying to look ahead, right?
That's right. And that's something that's cool about an all-boys environment, because the way you spark that, partly for boys, as we were saying, is experientially. So it's cool. Like, we'll get them outside. We have them reenact battles. Like for little boys, I mean, that's how they learn it just so much better if they do that.
That's probably not even allowed in most public schools.
That's true. That's right. And also choosing books that they like. Right, Men of Iron is a book we give to the 6th grade boys, and they love it. And so in an all-boys school, you're able to do things tailored to boys that's going to spark their interest. Especially in high school, in middle school, but also in high school, right? And you're right, it's all towards this point, like, get them engaged.
Do you guys, so the former governor of Indiana, who's now the president of Purdue, has this incantation that he references all the time. It's not about where you go to college, it's about how you go to college. Do you think that applies at the junior high to high school level, or is it's a little bit different at that level than it is, at the collegiate level, and parents need to understand the difference, that at the junior high to high school level, it actually is about where you go to school, not just how you go to where you go.
I think so. I mean, you're a dad.
Yeah, I mean, my son's, not only am I a member of the faculty and staff at Northridge, but I'm also the dad of a graduate, right, in 2010. And for my wife and me, we look back on our decision to have our son attend Northridge, and there's just I can't imagine our son having attended elsewhere, to be honest. And beyond what he learned in the classroom and the academic learning and even the extracurriculars, he was a basketball player and what have you. It was just the interaction, daily interaction with great men that it really influenced him, whether it were coaches or teachers or chaplain or whatever. And putting a young man in that environment, I mean, as a dad, that was my biggest concern, right? When it comes time for my son to go off to school, who's going to be with him for 35 hours a week when my wife and I are not around? Because we can teach what we need to teach at home, but is that going to be reinforced? Is it going to be promoted? Is it going to be modeled for him? And that's why going to a place like Northridge, attending Northridge, was so important in his formation. And as I said, my son went to the University of Notre Dame, and my wife and I would drive him back to school on weekends or what have you, and we'd start to drive back to Chicago, and we'd talk for about 10 minutes about his Notre Dame experience, and then spend the rest of the drive home thanking God that we had the opportunity to send our son to Northridge because of what he received there. And it goes beyond just the books and then the extracurricular activities. It's just this interaction with really good men and good role models.
And when I gave that book by Leonard Sachs, I don't know if you had
Boys Adrift. Yeah.
So one of the things he talks about is that if you look at enduring cultures over the last 2,000, 4,000 years, that any culture that has endured, there's always a tradition for boys, men taking them and showing them how to be a man, and for women, the women taking the girls and showing them what it means to be a woman. And he says it's different in different environments. So the Eskimos had a hunting tradition, a hunting ritual. For the Jews, I think he mentions the rabbis in the Torah. I could be wrong there. And he mentions other environments where there weren't hunters, there were agrarian, and there was different rituals. But in every society, you have men showing the boys what it means to be a man. He says it's important that it be somebody outside the family, because in the family it's subjective. Outside the family is objective reality, and so you need to provide that for your child somehow. It doesn't have to be an all-boys school. It could be a mentor in a rec league, but somewhere your son needs to find somebody he can look up to and say, that's what it means to be a man. And I know for me, where I went to school, there was a few teachers I look up to. I mean, I really did. Boys look for people they can identify with. And if you don't provide them with somebody, they're going to find it in the media.
Absolutely.
Or they're going to find it somewhere that you probably don't want them to find, just given the chances of the way the world is structured, right?
Right.
So where you send your kid to school is really important for all the reasons Will said. You know, the role models, the environment they're in, the friendships they make, right? The friends, and you know this, we all know this, the friends we had in middle and high school had a huge influence on how we turned out. And choosing or making sure your son and your daughter have good friends is very important to them. And at a school can definitely provide an environment where they're much more likely to have good friends, right? It doesn't mean that it can't occur in other schools, public schools. It by no means does it mean you can't go to public school and have a great child. You can, but it's definitely much easier and much more likely to turn out well at a place like Northridge.
For people who want more information on Northridge Prep, as well as this open house that you have upcoming for parents and their sons alike.
Yeah, so northridgeprep.org is our website, and we have our open house coming up October 22nd. Be great to have anybody come, 2 to 4 on October 22nd.
And with the tax credit scholarship coming online in Illinois, where you're talking about scholarships starting next year as much as $12,600 a year, and double that if your child has special needs or your child is gifted, either side of it. It makes private school more accessible to lower to middle income families than it's ever been.
That's right. Yeah. And we also provide a scholarship for first responders. So first responders get a $5,000 discount per child. So
Good to know.
yeah.
Niall Fagan, the headmaster at Northridge Prep. Will Ray, the athletic director and basketball coach at Northridge Prep. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us on this edition of Against the Current. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Dan.
Thanks.
Enjoyed it.